zikhala motani. Koma apapa ndoti anthu akamabwera basi ndoti tizirani azilowa then we start. Iwo akalowa basi atipeza ndekuti koma iwo anatuza anayesera ati ndi mwana wawo amagwisanso ntchito zomwe inake ndamati zatheka zonse zibwinobwino tikhala limodzi.
Ndapo nochovuta ncha.
Okay, basi nditingodikira 7 ikwane anthu akayamba kulowa then we take it from there.
Okay, chabwino. Okay.
Good evening, welcome Chatonda.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Hey, sorry about this.
Are you the Arnold Perry who used to be on Yasanet long time ago?
Correct.
All right, so it's an old friend. We get to meet finally.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just waiting for the 7 o'clock. What time is that on your on the other side of the planet?
It's just coming up 12 noon now. We're 7 hours behind.
Yeah, it's Earth going around the sun, so we should live with it.
Yeah.
Good evening, welcome Chisomo. Welcome Amos.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome everyone. As we wait for others to join, we can hang around for the next 5 minutes and then we kickstart the program. So meanwhile, there is something that we can be listening to as we wait for the others to join. So let's hang around rather for the next 5 minutes as we listen to this audio.
One colleague has joined us as iPhone. I don't know whether they'll be comfortable if we can assist them to rename so that we can know who they are. There's one iPhone joined us.
All right, you can repeat that, Mr. Arnold.
Hello. I suppose it is me. My name is Lusayo Mabumba. I am an associate professor of forestry at Mzuzu University.
So it's Lusai as in L-U... L-U-S-A-Y-O. Lusai.
Yes, that's my first name. My surname is Mabumba.
Mabumba.
Yes.
B-U-M-B...
MBA.
And the designation, Prof, Doctor, what do you want us to call you today?
Just call me Lusayo, that's fine.
Okay, that's fine. Just renamed it. Thank you very much.
Lusayo.
Hey, Soche, I'm here.
All right, so as we wait for the others to join us in the next 5 minutes, there's an audio that we can be listening to. Thank you.
Okay.
Kunali Johnny Chilembwe, Omala Chila Zulu, Analimbusa. Asamunda, Ajizungu. Bomalina Kangana na Yenso.
Acapella is cool.
Okay, Mr. Arnold Piri, are you there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, and
Okay.
nice to be on this forum.
Oh yeah, sure, great. So I think at this time we can roll out, and I would like to check on your side whether all is fine on the technical part before we kickstart. So over to you to give us the clearance in terms of the technical.
We are good, and thanks for the music in the background, and we are ready to go. Good evening, good afternoon, a good day to everyone. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, do you have any announcement to make on the technical part before we roll out?
I think a lot of people have complied and done the logins with their nice names, and no strange devices are appearing here, so it's all good. It's a good John Chilembwe day today. Thank you.
All right. Just in a moment, we'll be kickstarting. Let me check on my side if all is fine. I think everything is okay as well on my side here. All right. Okay, so in a moment, let me stop sharing. Okay. All right. Once more, Mr. Arnold Piri, can you hear me? Am I loud and clear?
I can hear you loud and clear, and I can see you as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sure. Thanks. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you are, to this Zoom session organized by the Lost History Foundation to commemorate John Chilembwe. And alongside him, we are also talking about Elliot Kamwana. We have two speakers tonight. Tonight, with respect to Malawi, because it's 10 minutes after 7 p.m. But I understand we are also joined by colleagues from the other part of the world where it is about noon. Others, it's early in the morning. Others, it's in the afternoon. So welcome all of you. So I beg your pardon when I talk about the evening. It is with respect to where I am in Malawi. All right, we were supposed to be joined by historian Edward Zombe. Cornelith, have you heard anything about him? Because I can't see him in the session.
I think he's preparing his laptop.
Okay. All right, so we can proceed. He will join us later because we were supposed to have two presenters for this evening, and Conleth Kamkwara Serenje to talk about John Chilembwe, and then historian Edward Zombe to talk about Elliot Kamwana. I will explain why we are looking at the two figures today, being Chilembwe Day. So nevertheless, we have to proceed. He will join us along the way. That is Edward Zombe. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and all participants, welcome to this session on the underrepresented narratives on John Chilembwe and Elliot Kamwana Chirwa. Every year, on the 15th of January, a day like today, Malawi commemorates John Chilembwe as a central figure in the country's anti-colonial struggle. His role and sacrifice remain undisputed and deserving of continued recognition. However, there has been a growing concern within the scholarly and public discourse that our commemorations have tended to narrow the historical lens, often presenting John Chilembwe as the sole or inaugural figure in the struggle for freedom in Malawi.
The historical record, however, reminds us that the resistance to colonial domination did not begin with the 1915 uprising that was led by John Chilembwe. Other figures, including Elliot Kamwana Chirwa, mobilized, organized, and challenged the colonial authority before John Chilembwe led the rebellion in 1915. But their contributions, sacrifices, and ideological visions have largely remained underrepresented in the mainstream narratives and national remembrance. It is from this concern that the Lost History Foundation has convened this session. Our objective is not to diminish John Chilembwe's legacy, but rather to broaden the frame of remembrance to create a more inclusive and historically grounded discourse that accommodates multiple actors who paid a price in the long and complex struggle for freedom in Malawi. It is also symbolically significant that this discussion takes place today on a day that marks the birth of Martin Luther King Jr., a global figure whose legacy similarly reminds us that the struggles for justice are indeed collective. With that framing, I invite all of us to engage openly, critically, and respectfully as we reflect on these underrepresented narratives and what they mean for how we remember, teach, commemorate Malawi's past. So without much ado, as I mentioned as I mentioned earlier on, we were supposed to have two speakers, Kamwana Selenje to talk about John Chilembwe, and then Edward Zombe to talk about Elliot Kamwana on a day like today, when we remember John Chilembwe, as far as Malawi history is concerned, as well as the celebration of the birth of Martin Luther King Jr., the central figure in the civil rights movement in the United States of America, whose day is also today, as far as his birth is concerned. So, Conleth, you take the floor. For the sake of our colleagues who are perhaps hearing for the first time about John Chilembwe, you take us, a little bit of a background of who John Chilembwe is, what he represents, before you get into the underrepresented narratives of John Chilembwe. Hopefully, by the time you finish your presentation, historian Edward Zombe shall have joined us to take us through on Elliot Kamwana. So you have 30 minutes maximum, with an addition with an allowance of 5 minutes if you need a little bit of more time, and also 30 minutes for historian Edward Zombe, and another 30 minutes for plenary discussion, inputs, questions, and so on and so forth, and then we close the session. So over to you, Conleth Kamwana Selenje, who is the executive director of the Lost History Foundation, who also happens to be a co-founder of the Lost History Foundation as well. He's based in Zomba, Malawi, which is the former capital city of Malawi, where he is residing and connecting tonight. Over to you, Conleth Kamwana Selenje. Thank you.
I got a quick announcement. I'm streaming on YouTube. I've got a link on the chat. So if people want to share with other people, and I've sent the link as well on the WhatsApp group, Lost History. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. No, thanks. Well noted.
Thank you.
Conleth, the floor is yours. So you can take the floor, and you can also share your slides from your end. Thank you.
All right. I had lost my signal, but I'm back. Let me get organized with my slides. Can you see my slides from there?
Unfortunately, not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
You have to
Not
click
yet.
the
Okay.
you didn't click the
Okay.
share button.
Yeah. If I do that, can you see?
Yeah, it's coming up, but not yet. But we can see that, yes, you are there. We can see your slides.
You can now see my screen.
Yeah, so you can roll.
Okay. Let me do this here. All right. Today is the 15th of January, 2026, a day which has been set by the government of Malawi. It was set actually to commemorate the legacy of the Reverend John Chilembwe, who's considered as both as a martyr and the first Malawian to voice out clearly protest to colonialism in Malawi. But as we study history, we also find that Chilembwe was not just alone. Of course, the people didn't work together, but Chilembwe was not alone, as he was on one side protesting against colonialism in Malawi. In another part of Malawi, the northern region, there was also another hero named Elliot Kamwana. So bring the two together is the theme of today's discussion. We are going beyond established narratives, and we are looking at underrepresented perspectives on John Chilembwe and Elliot Kamwana. Kamwana seems not to be recognized much as John Chilembwe has been, but I believe at the end of this presentation, viewers will appreciate who Kamwana was and who Chilembwe was, and how the two, the activities, the legacy of the two connects to our early struggle for freedom in Malawi. Here is a picture of John Chilembwe on the left. It's common, it's seen. It has been seen for quite a number of years. Now, on the right is a picture of Elliot Kamwana. His real name was Elliot Masokwa Kenan Kamwana Chirwa, and he was from Nkata Bay, a Tonga Bai tribe. The presenters. So let us look at my slide. I can't see my slide properly. The intertwine between Elliot Kamwana and John Chilembwe, how the two are similar, how the two can relate. So first, they were born within the same period. Chilembwe was born around 1860 to around 1871. This period, the year is not specific because records were difficult to keep during that time. So history says Chilembwe was born between 1860 to 1871, between these years. And Elliot Kamwana was born in 1872. And this meant that the two grew up being influenced by social, political, and cultural factors which shaped their lives in the regions and the land they lived in Nyasaland. One in the north, in Nkata Bay, one in the south, in the district of Chiradzulu. Both being born before Nyasaland was declared a protectorate, growing up and seeing Nyasaland being declared a protectorate in 1891. So how were the lives of the two influenced, although they were living in different regions of the country, different regions of the protectorate? First, we should know that they were all influenced by the slave trade. During that period, the slave trade was in effect. Of course, it was coming towards the end, but as they were growing up, they were influenced by activities of the slave trade in their different areas. The second factor was that they were influenced by activities of European traders who infiltrated the land for trade. But more importantly, these two young men were influenced by the influx of missionaries and their work in our land. By then, missionary work was coming to its recognition. Missionaries were scattered all over the land, of course, not everywhere, but in many areas, and the influence of their work was being realized. Again, they witnessed the declaration of our land to a British colony officially in 1891. As they were growing up, they also were exposed to social conflict between the natives of the land and their chiefs against British occupation. There was considerable resistance from the natives of the land to British occupation. So they witnessed this again taking place. Again, we cannot deny that they witnessed the birth of infrastructure development in the land, mainly the introduction of roads and other minimal structures. Let us look at historical evidence agreeing with the background of the two from what I've said. Around 1860s, Islam was introduced through Swahili Arab traders in Kota Kota. I've said Chilembwe was born around 1860 to 1871. Kamwana around 1872. So there is evidence to what I've said. And the first evidence is around 1860s was the introduction of Islam by the Swahili Arab traders in Kota Kota. Around the same time, the first waves of Christianity were introduced in the land through the work of Dr. David Livingstone. And from 1880s to 1890s, British authority was imposed on Nyasaland. After the land was declared a British protectorate or a British colony, there were the birth of roads, railway lines, and plantations, and church schools in different parts of the land. Here, we see a picture. Much was taught than practiced by the whites in Nyasaland. What do I mean by this? The whites of Nyasaland, mainly the missionaries, did not practice what they taught to the people. The people were under oppression by the government. On the other side, the preacherman, the missionaries, preached equality. Every man is equal before the eyes of the Creator. That is the preaching, the statements of the missionaries. On the other hand, the government oppressing the people in many, many ways, which history is able to tell. let's look at societal changes during the early lives of Chilembwe and Kamwana. What changes? As Chilembwe and Kamwana grew up, they also witnessed a shift from our ways of life to foreign ways. For example, there was the decline of the iron smelting and weaving industries of the land. Again, there was change of power from local leaders in the local setup, such as chiefs. Power was now shifting to government authority. The influence of native leaders was minimizing, was coming to a decline because now there was a government which was taking over. The other change was in customs and values of the people as condemned by foreign religions, Islam and Christianity. These two people also witnessed condemnation of what they valued. Chilembwe was a Yao and a Manganja, partly Chewa. Kamwana was a Tonga. But there was influence of foreign religions, and what they valued as norms, as values in their societies, was facing challenges. It was being condemned by foreign religions, Christianity and Islam. Again, there was the change of local farming methods to new methods brought by the white rule. They also witnessed resistance of some chiefs to foreign rule, and they witnessed the decline and subsequent end of the East African slave trade. So both Chilembwe and Kamwana converted from their African spirituality beliefs held dearly by their grandparents. They were baptized into Christianity and transformed their names. John was a baptismal name of Chilembwe. So he changed his name from Nkologo to John. And Masokwa changed his name from Masokwa to the name Elliot. Now, this was an influence on their spiritual life and beliefs brought in by religions which infiltrated the land. This slide here, I've given it this title. I would like you to take note of the title. Two minds, the mind of Kamwana and the mind of Chilembwe, either poisoned or sharpened by the same mentor and by the same book. Now this forms an important part of our discussion here. Two minds. Think of Kamwana, think of Chilembwe, either sharpened by the teachings of the same book, the Bible, or their minds poisoned by the teachings of the same book. And the two men having the same mentor, but in different periods of their time. Let's start with Kamwana. The time Chilembwe returned to open his PIM church, that's 1900, was the time Elliot Kamwana got exposed to the teachings of the Bible through Joseph Booth. It's an interesting part. Both Kamwana and John Chilembwe got exposed to the critical teachings of Joseph Booth. So we see Booth influencing the early life of John Chilembwe and making him grow into an ordained pastor, taking him to America, and Chilembwe came back by himself, opened the PIM. It is the same Booth who also inspired Elliot Kamwana. That's why I gave this title to this slide, Two Minds, either poisoned or sharpened by the same mentor and the same book. Kamwana used the Bible as a tool. Chilembwe used the Bible as a tool. Now here comes the picture of the man who shaped the minds of the two. This is the mentor of the two heroes today, Joseph Booth and Elliot. Elliot Kamwana and John Chilembwe. You can take a look at him. He's one of the greatest men in history of Malawi. So as we also talk about these two, let's also think of what this man planted in the minds of these two heroes. A tool or a manual or God's word, I would like you to ponder on this question. I would like you to think critically about this question as we look at how Chilembwe used it and how Kamwana used it and how the people today are using it and how the people today are understanding it. Should we take it as a tool? Has it been a tool? Or has it been a manual of life? Or it's only God's word? This is the Holy Bible. This is what Chilembwe studied, and this is what Kamwana studied. This is what Chilembwe preached. This is what Kamwana preached. This is what Joseph Booth preached. And this is the same book which the other missionaries who were in Malawi also used. Is it a tool? Was it a manual? Or it's just God's word? The understanding of
We lost you, Mr. Selenji. I don't know whether I'm the only one.
Yeah, he was frozen and now it seems to be probably he's trying to reconnect.
Yeah. Seems we have lost Selenje. Probably we can hang around to wait for him as he tries to get back. Selenje, are you back?
I'm back. I just need to share my screen.
Okay.
There. Can you see it there? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see the screen. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Then can I proceed?
Selenje, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah,
Okay,
you can go
so
ahead.
please proceed.
Okay. So I'm trying to look at how Chilembwe and Kamwana understood the Bible and how they used it. So Chilembwe and Kamwana understood the Bible, understood that the Bible taught that all men are equal before God, before the Creator. They also understood that man has to live a free life, a life of dignity in the land that God gave him. However, the relation of the first missionaries and the colonial authorities in Nyasaland spoke differently. The early missionaries were voiceless to the oppressions of the colonial government on the locals of Nyasaland. And that was a total contrast to what the Bible taught. So Kamwana and Chilembwe understood the Bible differently from how others understood it, from how other missionaries understood it. They expected more to be done by other missionaries, by the government, justly on the people of Nyasaland. They expected equality. They expected justice. They expected a free life of dignity in the land which the Creator God had given to the people. John Chilembwe and Elliot Kamwana both condemned colonial policies. For example, they condemned taxation. They condemned the Tangata system in Nyasaland. They condemned the disregard of human rights on the natives. They also condemned the social inequality between the Europeans and the natives of Nyasaland. Both Chilembwe and Kamwana had been exposed to life outside Nyasaland. We know Chilembwe had been exposed to life outside Nyasaland in America, where he witnessed activities of Negroes towards oppressive authority. And Kamwana had been exposed to life outside Nyasaland in South Africa, where oppression and resistance to oppressive authority was well pronounced than in Nyasaland. Now, this exposure to the outside world played a bigger role in how Chilembwe and Kamwana acted in their respective areas of influence. We look at rivalry in the bases of Chilembwe and Kamwana. Now, think of Chilembwe operating in Chiradzulu, the area of Mbombwe, and think of Kamwana operating in the northern part of Malawi, in Katabe. In the north, there was the influence of the Livingstonia mission. And where Chilembwe was, in Chiradzulu, not far from where his base was, there was a Catholic center, a Catholic center in Nguludi. So by 1900, John Chilembwe had his PIM with its headquarters in Chiradzulu, not far from the influence of the Catholics within the same area who had opened their church and center at Nguludi in 1903. On the other hand, Elliot Kamwana opened his Watchtower movement in 1908 and was a direct rival of the Livingstonia mission in his region. So Chilembwe and Kamwana both were vocal in their teachings, condemning practices of the colonial administration, while their fellow churches were moderate on the colonial government. I hope you grasp the point there. Chilembwe and Kamwana were both vocal in their teachings, condemning practices of the colonial government, colonial administration, while their fellow churches were moderate on the colonial government. So this is an example of how great these people were. This is a church of the PIM built by Chilembwe at Mbombwe around 1909 to 1915. Look at how it was. And imagine that period, 1909, 1910, 1915, 1915. It is a fine work of engineering. So can we say there was a rivalry in Christianity, or rivalry due to Christianity? By what they did, Chilembwe and Kamwana were viewed as rivals by fellow churches and anti-government by the colonial government. Kamwana was arrested in 1909, and it led to a protest and revolt by his followers. So we see here different churches looking at Chilembwe as a rival and looking at Kamwana as a rival. That's why I tagged this slide as rivalry, but in Christianity. They are all Christians preaching using the same book, but looking at each other as rivals. In Chiradzulu, Chilembwe facing some unpalatable relation with the Catholics, and in the north, Kamwana facing the same from the Livingstonia mission. Two dreaded Nyasas operating from 1900 to 1916. This is Kamwana and Chilembwe. So the years 1900 to 1916 were the years when the colonial government viewed Chilembwe and Kamwana as preachers who could bring Black consciousness to the natives through their preaching and the message they preached. The colonial government had put in all efforts and measures to suppress Chilembwe and Kamwana. The same government had put measures to have Chilembwe arrested and deported to Seychelles after he authored a seditious letter, so-called, condemning recruitment of Nyasas to fight on the side of the British during the First World War. And Kamwana also condemned the same. That's why I've tagged this, I've titled this slide, Two Dreaded Nyasas between 1900 to 1916. Kamwana condemned the policy of churches on charging fees on education. By 1916, he had been labeled as a threat to the colonial government and was deported to Mauritius and later to Seychelles. That was a year before Chilembwe had been killed after his uprising. But the fire of independence had not been quenched in the minds of Nyasa natives. So after Kamwana was deported, he stayed for close to 20-something years, I think, in Mauritius, then later Seychelles. And back home here, Chilembwe was killed. But although Kamwana was deported, and although Chilembwe was killed, still the fire of being independent was not quenched. The desire for independence was not killed in the people of Nyasaland. It's when we saw the birth of, the progression of native associations, later to a political party, Nyasaland African Congress, very late to the formation of the Malawi Congress Party in 1959, then independence. So these are the connections between Elliot Kamwana and John Chilembwe. I would like you to see or to analyze the connections which I've made relating to these two heroes. And now ask yourself why the story of John Chilembwe was told, of course, not fully told, and the story of Kamwana was just left aside or suppressed. It's not told to the fullest. But as we see today, history is bringing the two to almost an equalness not by bias or whatsoever, but by what they were doing. Let me stop there and let the moderator take over as we go to the next section of my presentation. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Conlith Kamkwara Serenje, for the insightful presentation, laying the ground on the insights on John Chilembwe and Elliot Kamwana. I would like then now to open the floor for questions and comments. But before I do that, Conlith, can you help me here? I would want to get us into a short break for 3 minutes so that you assist me to get in touch with Edward Zombe, because I see he's calling me here, but I can't pick the call because I'm moderating. So can you call him and check if he's struggling to connect in the next 3 minutes as we get into a short break, and then you give us a feedback, what he says, and then we continue to the round of questions, comments from the floor directed to you. So can you mute yourself, audio and video, and get in touch with Zombe while we are on a short break, and then we take it after 3 minutes. Colleagues, one of the presenters was supposed to join us from the beginning. It seems he's struggling. And then our colleague, Kamkwara Serenje, who is also assisting me in terms of doing the technicalities, will just get to check what is happening with him. Meanwhile, let's have a short break right now. Thank you.
Moderator, I see there's a hand. Maybe during the break, we can give an opportunity to.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, during the break, yeah. So meanwhile, let's have a short break, then we see what we can do. Yeah.
Yourself. Hello. Hello.
Yes. Ada Zombe, welcome. Zombe, we can hear you loud and clear.
You can hear me?
Yes, Zombe, we can hear you. You can cut the call and concentrate on this Zoom. We can see you. We can also hear what you're saying. And we were waiting for you, actually.
All right. Actually, what should I do now with my presentation?
Yeah, we were actually waiting for you. So you are right inside the Zoom. Conlith has just finished presenting. So we were just looking for you where you are. So, are you ready to present?
No, I have a presentation here, so can you give instruction? What should I do with that presentation?
Okay, so I just wanted to establish whether you are
When I
set.
open it, you will see it. When I open
We
my
may not.
presentation, I'm going to see it there.
Okay. Open it, and then Mr. Piri, my colleague, is going to assist you how to share it. So meanwhile,
All right.
ladies and gentlemen, the historian Edward Zombe is here with us, and my suggestion is that probably we can get his presentation so that when we get into the discussion, we combine the two. We should be reacting to what Conlith has told us or has shared with us, and then what Edward Zombe is also going to say, because the presentation are intertwined. So they are speaking to each other. So I suggest that we take them on board at once with regards to the inputs and comments and questions at the end. So Mr. Edward Zombe, you are welcome to the session. Conlith has just finished his presentation. You have 30 minutes to do your presentation. We can't see your presentation for the time being, but my colleague Arnold Piri shortly is going to give you guidance on how we can, you can beam your presentation for us to be following on the screen. I guess you have PowerPoint slides, right?
Yeah,
Mr.
I have a
Zombe?
I have a PowerPoint presentation, which I
Okay.
prepared.
All right. So just hang up. Okay, just hang on for the few seconds. Mr. Arnold Piri, can you assist Mr. Zombe to beam his slides and then he takes us through? Over to you, Mr. Arnold Piri.
Good evening, Mr. Zombe. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you.
Okay, so open your presentation. I hope you have opened it already.
No, I have not opened it. I'm
Open
still
it
on
on
this.
your open it on your laptop or desktop. Yeah.
Okay. I think you can see it.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Just leave it like that, and then go on the Zoom menu at the bottom. Can you see that green share thing? There's an icon at the bottom that says share.
Okay, let me see it here.
Yeah, so click the share icon.
Just wait. Where is it?
So it will be within the Zoom application where you are. At the bottom, you've got the icons for audio, video, participants, chat, react. One of them is a share. Can you see that one?
Let me see it.
A green arrow, like, pointing out.
You still can't see it. Or alternatively, if you are struggling to see it, we can say start speaking to your slides, and then we get hold of your slides at the end for us to circulate to the participants. So meanwhile, you can be going through your slides. We will not be we'll just be seeing your face as you present, as you talk to us. But then at the end, you can share with us the slides, whether on WhatsApp or through the email, and then we can circulate to the participants so that we save time. Is that okay, Mr. Edward Zombe?
It's okay, but are you seeing me there?
We can see you, but we can't see the slides. We can hear you, we can also see you. So it's fine, you can talk to us.
All right, that's okay. If you can see me, you can hear me, that's okay.
That's fine. So before you start,
All right.
to all the participants, I will do. We are going to. I'm going to post the email address on the chat so that you can write an email to that email address. Then in response, I'm going to attach the PowerPoint presentation by historian Edward Zombe. So to you, Edward Zombe, after this session, I will text you my email address, and then you can email the slides as an attachment, and then I can circulate to all the participants. So in the interest of time, the floor is yours. Take us through Elliot Kamwana. If possible, you introduce who Elliot Kamwana is, because we have got participants who are joining us from United States of America and other parts of the world. Probably they are hearing for the first time who the name Elliot Kamwana, and they don't know who he could be. So help us to also introduce him for people to appreciate and understand him, and then take us through to talk about the underrepresented narratives as far as Elliot Kamwana Chirwa is concerned. At the time
Mr.
being,
Moderator, yeah,
okay.
Before you proceed, there's a suggestion that Edward could put the presentation to somebody who can actually share it. That way, all he has to do is next slide, and so be able to follow along with him.
Okay. Yeah, Mr. Edward Zombe, good suggestion. Are you able to send your presentation to the email address that has been posted on the chat, so that as you present, someone can open it up? If you see the chat, there's an email address. Are you able to do? It's too much for you, right?
I think that would be too much for me.
Fine,
those technicalities.
Okay, no, it's fine.
Forgive me.
It was just a suggestion whether you could do it, but if you can't, just roll. We are seeing you, we are hearing you. Talk to us.
All right.
We'll deal with the technicalities at the end. Over to you, Mr. Edward Zombe.
All right. I'm Edward Zombe. I'm a historian by choice. I didn't study history, but I'm a historian by choice. Circumstances forced me to be a historian. I will present about Elliot Kamwana. Yes, I'll give his background, but I will talk much about his relationship with the spirit of nationalism in Malawi. Elliot Kamwana, who is popularly known as Elliot Kamwana, but his full name is Masokwa Elliot Kenan Kamwana Chirwa. He was born around 1872. His parents were captured during the war between the Tongas and the Ngoni. So he was born when his parents were in captivity under the Ngoni hegemony at a village called Mpopomeni village in today Mzimba. And during his young age, we know all of us that Banda was the pioneer mission in the north. And during his pioneer age, his parents took him to Bandawe at a place called Chifira. Of course, there were his relationship there. So he studied at Bandawe, then he continued his study at Overton Institute, which is today Kondowe, where he completed Stand 3 in 1901, finishing third in his class. When he came back to Chifira, it was told he called himself Elliot, but others say Elliot was the name he adopted when he was baptized. So Elliot, he said, after he was baptized, he left school. He withdrew from the Overton Institute in protest of the introduction of school fees. And as he thought that a missionary education ought to have been free. Some sources say that his desire to continue school were hampered by a quota policy institute. A quota policy the institute had put in place against the Tonga prospective students. We remember after the missionaries established themselves at Blantyre, the Tongas at Blantyre became very much attracted to education. So there were masses of Tongas in the school when the Livingstonia shifted to Kondowe. So because of that, the missionaries had come up with a quota policy where which was restrictive to the Tonga students. Now, it is worthy to know that despite being the youngest in class, at that time, it was said that Kamwana would usually had a lot of questions for his teachers, and the teachers and his friends most of the time were frustrated by his constant questioning of the situation in class and the like. So that also made the missionaries look at him as not a repentant believer. So with all those, Kamwana, after school, left for Chinde. Standard 3 at that time, which was equivalent, I think, to today's standard 6, was the highest you could go with education at the Overton Institute. After that, you were absorbed in technical courses. So after his standard 6, Elliot Kamwana left for Chinde in Mozambique, where he worked for a transport company between 1901 and 1902. And that time, Joseph Booth was passing through Chinde coming to Malawi to establish what we today call Malamulo. So that time, Elliot, Joseph Booth invited Kamwana if he could come to join him at Malamulo. So with that invitation, Kamwana left Chinde in 2000 and joined Booth at Malamulo, which is today Cholo. So at Malamulo, Elliot Kamwana found the Booth and his friends trying to establish a school. And he was offered a position to teach in standard 1. So he became a teacher. So as we know, Booth was one of the early supporters of the American Colonization Society and a zealous exponent of the Africa for Africans philosophy. This is a philosophy which was started, popularized by the American African Colonization Society. So one of the exponents of that philosophy was Joseph Booth. So immediately, Elliot Kamwana engaged with Booth and the Mebo branch at Malamulo. He started being exposed himself to that philosophy, Africa for the Africans philosophy. And it was during that stay at Malamulo when Kamwana was also exposed to the teachings of Ethiopianism, that is whereby American Africans were trying to rally for Africans to establish their own church basing on the African culture. So that they took that from the biblical teachings. So the book of Psalms 68 verse 31, which according to the King's Version says, Ethiopia will stretch out her hands unto God. So we know Ethiopia was the land in Africa. So Ethiopia was going to rise. So they took that to mean that Africans were going to rise and establish their own churches. So with those two philosophies, Kamwana started being a radical. On September 9, Kamwana was baptized alongside other first 6 African converts into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That is at Malamulo. So he was baptized into the Seventh-day along 6 first Africans converts. And Kamwana left Malamulo in early 1905 after Booth had already left. We know Booth was deported from Nyasaland because of his teachings, of his philosophy. So Kamwana, he left Kamwana to Malamulo. Then in 1905, Kamwana left after Booth had already left. So between 1905 and 1908, Kamwana was in South Africa. So he left Malamulo. He was in South Africa and he worked as a timekeeper and a hospital assistant at the main reef mine at Roodbot. At Roodbot, Kamwana continued his preaching. Kamwana was born a preacher. When Booth met him in Chinde, he was already preaching. But his preaching was not yet radicalized because he had not yet been exposed to the philosophy of Africans for the Africans and Ethiopianism. So Kamwana now, after leaving Malamulo, he was in South Africa. He continued his preaching. At Roodbot, Kamwana regularly preached to the NASA workers while also conducting preaching visits to Pretoria, Williamson, and Durban. For about 6 months in 1907, Kamwana stayed with Booth, now in Cape Town, where he was introduced to Charles Taze Russell. Russell was the founder of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, later the Jehovah's Witnesses. And Kamwana was introduced to the precise millennium approach messages advocated by the Russell's tract. So Kamwana is more inculcated with radical approaches to his preaching. We see now Kamwana for the being now attached to another third wave of philosophy by the Russell Church. So in Cape Town, Kamwana proved to be Booth's outstanding student. So Booth was training them. There were a lot of them. So Booth was training them, inculcating them with the spirit of Africa for the Africans, Ethiopianism, and the millennium approach messages. So Kamwana proved to be the outstanding student of Booth in Cape Town. Kamwana wanted to go to further studies in America, but Russell refused. He said he should be trained in South Africa. Kamwana left South Africa in July and arrived back home in Nyasa in October 1908. Now Kamwana was a radicalized, a Protestant. So he's back in Nyasaland with all that, and he's equipped with the Watchtower doctrines. He's bringing in the country the first wave messages of Ethiopianism, which he started planting amongst the first amongst his fellow Tongas, because Kamwana first arrived in Chintech area. In Chintech area, which was the stronghold of the Livingstonian mission. We know of Chintech areas in Blantyre, and Blantyre was the stronghold of the Livingstonian mission. It is at Blantyre where it started spreading to other places, to Kondowe, to Njuyu, to Ekwendeni, to Zambia, to Tanzania. So Blantyre was the launch pad of Kamwana church. So Kamwana, coming back to Blantyre with his messages, he established the Pan-Africanist Inform Watchtower. Others call it movement, others call it a church. He picked that watchtower name from the Russell's church. So he picked that and he named his church Watchtower. So at the closing of 1998, Kamwana started from Chifira. He visited Nkota, he visited Karonga, discussing and enjoying paper about the problems. And the attraction to Kamwana was made easy because the Livingstonia mission had put in place a policy where you have to undergo a certain period and certain instructions for you to be accepted as a Christian and be baptized. But Kamwana said all that to him didn't matter. What mattered was a person has repented, has agreed, has confessed. It was immediate baptism. So there was those who were denied baptism for various reasons by the Livingstonia church rushed to Kamwana's church. So Kamwana became a radical, had a lot of support. It is said by March 1905, Kamwana had baptized 10,000 people. And in Tongaland, which is Blantyre, that included one of the influential chiefs, who is Mankambira. So Kamwana now, the church, the movement Kamwana established collided now with the philosophers and the teaching, one of the Livingstonia mission, secondly of the colonial government. Because Kamwana now was telling people that the imposition of school fees by the mission is bad because the missionary education ought to be free. Kamwana now was he was opposition teachings and Professor Dare saying that he was a threat to government. So Kamwana was talking about the government will go, the white people go, will start importing our guns and so forth. So Kamwana started being in collision with the government policies, the missionary policies, because that time, when we say the mission, it was the Livingstonia, the Free Church, the Blantyre mission, the Catholic Church. Apart from those, the others were taken as being radical. So Kamwana became so radical through his open baptism by, we say, statistics of Kamwana supporters grew very fast. And the Livingstonia Synod started to become worried. The colonial government started to become worried. So Kamwana had created himself two fronts of enemies, the missionaries and the government. So in 1910, when Booth visited the Seventh-day Baptist Congregation at Plainwood in New York, Booth had gone to canvass for funding to give to mushrooming independent churches in Africa, especially in Nyasaland. So he had gone to Plainfield in Jersey in America to canvass for that. And it is said that Booth used Kamwana's statistics on conversion. The people unconverted by Kamwana were presented, the figures, the numbers were presented by Booth and Chilembwe to solidify their argument, their cause that Africans were willing to be independent, were willing to start with their own churches. All what they needed was the money and the capacity training. So it was Kamwana's statistics on convention that the two presented. And it was said that they were able to get $50 and later $100 a month, which both was able to forward to selected leaders of independent churches in Nyasaland. And Kamwana's influence in the areas I've said was a damage to the Livingstonian mission. Thus, under the influence of Markapen, of Bandawe, Emsley, and Fraser in motion, sustained opposition to the teachings and pressed for his arrest, saying that he was a threat to the government and the whole colonial order. Kamwana often spiced his messages with the trade slogan, Kwacha. You know, Kwacha is a national symbol in Malawi, and we learn from history books that it was Kamwana who started to arouse emotions from his supporters, say, Kwacha, Africa Yuka, it's dawn, Africa, arise, which he often used to arouse the emotions of his people and supporters. So Kamwana's divine messages were packaged as following: I've brought you a new message which will bring many out of Babylon, which was prophesizing that the colonial government will go. We shall build our own ships, make our own guns, powder, import our own guns. So that is Kamwana now. He's telling his supporters that this government you see will go. And the government became more worrisome of Kamwana, who was now unexpectedly using the Bible to advance his political agenda, and felt that if this was left unchecked, the aftermath would be dangerous and detrimental to peace and stability. So because of the messages, the uttering, the speeches by Kamwana and his supporters, the government as well as the mission, so that if this was left unchecked, it might end up destroying peace and the stability which was prevailing at that time in the country. So it made a swift response by issuing a circular on 28 March 1990, in which it summarized a case against Kamwana. Kamwana was accused of disseminating seditious political and religious doctrines. He was accused, the government accused him for calling for the end of taxation, agitating for the end of British rule, foretelling of the final advent in October 1914, and advocating for the formation of native state as a seditious utterances. So the government now summarizes a case against Kamwana. Kamwana now is called by the government. The government offers Kamwana a choice to either leave the country and go to South Africa, or if he refused, to be restricted at Fort Anderson in Mulanje. So during this period, when Kamwana was making a decision, the government was waiting for him to get, he was supposed to be reporting regularly to the resident agent. You have to make a choice, whether you leave or you are restricted to Port Anderson in Mulanje. And Kamwana refused to leave the country, and as a result, he was arrested and sent to Zomba, where he was interrogated and briefly detained. From there, under an armed guard, he was escorted to Chinde, where in June 1909, while restrained, he was boarded on the deck of a German steamer and deported to South Africa, where together with his fellow Tonga tribesmen, Jordan Msumba, they were accommodated by the very Joseph Booth, who radicalized him. So Kamwana now, the first deportation, arrest of Kamwana is happening. So His arrest provoked widespread unrest dubbed Kamwana Revolt of 1909, which was most intense around his base at Mdiaka, his home, where he had put his base and Sanga, forcing government to deploy police in the area. So we see Kamwana now for the first time. He's arrested. He's told to choose either he stops whatever he's preaching, whatever he's doing, or he's restricted to Mulanje, Fort Anderson, or is sent to banished to South Africa. So Kamwana is banished to South Africa. So that marks the beginning of Kamwana's arrest. All right, in around 1910, and then the Kamwana was allowed to come back. And the government thought by sending away for some time he was going to repent, and unfortunately when he came back in that period, he revived his preaching, and he revived his baptisms. So Kamwana is back with the same preaching, with the same philosophy. So in 1911, we're seeing Booth writing John Chilembwe, and he's telling John Chilembwe that the training he was conducting in Cape Town was very effective. And he is telling Chilembwe that while the natives in South Africa, few natives in South Africa were able to stand and teach or face the white men. However, his student Elliot Kamwana was the first to do that. So Kamwana is in Cape Town, he's facing, challenging, all right, trying to critique the white people. So here Booth is saying that the first to do that was his student Elliot Kamwana. So Kamwana, Booth is writing John Chilembwe. Now, he was arrested after coming back in 1911, after being late in 1911. He was arrested within a few days and deported again to Chinde in Portuguese East Africa, where he established a large following of the Watchtower movement, which raised some discomfort with the Portuguese colonial administration again. So while there, Kamwana, while he was in Portuguese East Africa, the government there became agitated by his actions and detained him in custody for a month. While Walter Cockrell was on his way to the country in 1914, he heard about Kamwana, but he was refused to meet Kamwana because Kamwana was living under restrictive order. So Cockrell, who was an American evangelist, is coming into the country. Has the same philosophy with Joseph Booth. After all, people refer to him as the successor to Joseph Booth. So in Chinde is about Kamwana. He wants to meet him. The government says, no, you cannot meet him. Kamwana was allowed to return to Nigeria in 1914. Now he's back for the third time for a closer monitoring. But as soon as he reached Mulanje on the border with Mozambique, he was once more promptly arrested and detained at Mulanje and later at detention facility until 1916. So we see Kamwana now being in custody from 1914 to 1916 in detention. It is said an attempted prison break by his followers was thwarted by the government. So there was an attempted to free him, but the government thwarted it. While detained at Mulanje, government intercepted some correspondence that indicated that Kamwana had been in contact with Chilembwe and was aware of his plans to stage a mutiny, which he himself did not subscribe to. So 1914, Kamwana is in detention. There's this communication with the Chilembwe, and Kamwana says, no, don't talk, don't take that course. Kamwana agrees with the Chilembwe's grievances because they were also the grievances he had put across to government, to missionaries, but he is advising Chilembwe, don't take the mutiny way. So we read that in the history books. Kamwana, before Chilembwe's uprising, Kamwana remained the most dreaded African by the colonial government, a position which was later to be abruptly interrupted by the unexpected brief uprising by Chilembwe and his followers of the Providence Industrial Mission. So we are seeing that all along before Chilembwe's uprising, the most dreaded African by the colonial government and the missionaries was Elliot Kamwana. So all the intelligence, the security intelligence, the police apparatus focused on Kamwana. It was after the Chilembwe uprising that position now shifted from Kamwana to Chilembwe. So we are seeing in 1900, we are seeing unable to contain his influence and increasing support base, government applying the 1908 political removal and detention of natives ordinance, which provided for deportation of any African deemed a danger to order and good government. Finally, in December 1916, arrested Kamwana, who was at the time still in detention, and also arrested his wife, Annie Nyamanda. So the Chilembwe uprising has taken place. Here is Kamwana, who is still in detention. Now the words are saying, with this Chilembwe uprising and this Kamwana in detention, if we release him, what will be next? So the colonial government was in dilemma. Should we release Kamwana after what we have seen with the Chilembwe? So in December 1916, they rearrested. He is already in detention. They issued a warrant of arrest, and they also arrest his wife, Nyamanda. Government also arrested his brother, Yohani Chandaka Chirwa, and his wife, Nyalongwe, together with William Laga Mwenda and his Yao wife, who were both arrested in Limbe. You know, the Watchtower movement had a very strong following in Limbe, and Mulaga Mwenda was the man leading that movement there. So he is the brother of Kamwana is arrested, and William Mulaga Mwenda and his Yao wife is arrested in Limbe, and were both arrested, and the four were taken to Chinde, where they joined Kamwana and his wife. And on 6 December, they all left Chinde via Durban under escort and were banished to Mauritius. So we see in December, Kamwana and his brother and their wives and their friend, Mulaga Mwenda, they're arrested, they're taken to Chinde, they're bound in the steamer, and they're banished now to Mauritius. So that would be a long journey. So now Kamwana is in Mauritius, is banished. Now the spread of the Watchtower movement. So we are saying that before before the World War I erupted, the Watchtower had established 51 churches in the West Nyasa, up to Karonga in the north, to Kasung in the west, and Mangochi. An average of 1,844 and 4,475 adherents were attending its services monthly in Limbe and in Ncheu district. So the Watchtower has taken hold of Limbe and Ncheu district. Despite arresting and deporting Kamwana to Mauritius, the Watchtower movement and its politically provocative messages propagated mostly by the Tonga labor migrants spread as far as Chinde, southern Rhodesia, the Copper Belt, northern Rhodesia, Manono in Belgium, Congo, and southwest Tanzania. In southern Rhodesia, while the government there became incensed with the Watchtower movement in the mines in around 1917, it was clear that the movement had been there for some time, as Kamwana was said to have passed through the country in 1910. So when Kamwana passed through that country in 1910, possibly on his way to South Africa or on his way back or on a visitation from South Africa, we see Kamwana now personally introducing the Watchtower in Zimbabwe. And we hear that Alfred Mtewe, who was dubbed a traveling manager from Chinteje district, was said to have visited Kwekwe area in southern Rhodesia for 3 months and baptized his fellow countrymen into the Watchtower. And in southern Rhodesia, the movement grew so much because southern Rhodesia now, with its minerals, with its growth of mines, there were a lot of Tonga migrants going there for work. And some of the notable leaders to have emerged in southern Rhodesia at the time were Sandra Chirwa, who was at Globe and Phoenix mine, Lamwek Mwase was at Shamva mine, Gideon Manda, who was at Eldorado mine, James T. Stanley Manda, who was at Sinoya mine, and Alexander Mwenda, who was at Wanke. Wanke, that time, was the largest, the mine which employed the largest number of workers by then in Southern Africa. Wanke coal mine. So the Watchtower was very active at Wanke. It was as if it was its headquarters in Southern Rhodesia. In northern Rhodesia, now Zambia, the Watchtower doctrines were first picked up and spread by graduates of the Livingstonia Mwenzo Mission, who was Hanok Sindano and Levist Katikanjere in between 1918 and 1919. So in 1920, the Watchtower had 39 congregations in Mulanje district, making the most saved district by the movement, second to Chinteje district in the country. So the Watchtower is spreading as a political movement with its philosophy, because what is said is that the appearance of this independent movement, church movement, signaled the first expression of African nationalism, nationalistic sentiments against European colonial government in Africa. So it was these independent African churches which both supported, which others, while they were initiated on themselves, but both had a lot of influence on them. So these were the churches now which were planting the national consciousness in the Africans. So the appearance of independent churches which traced the idea of equality from the Bible. Yeah, you know, when the Christianity came in, we know it was the Livingstonia Synod which invited the African Leagues Company, which invited the colonial government. And when the issues of inequality, of segregation, of racism, these issues were rising up, these Africans, these like Elliot Kamwana, they could always refer to the Bible. That, you know, you brought the Bible, but the Bible is saying contrary to what is happening. So the Bible became the checkpoint, and that's why it was difficult for the missionaries and the colonial government to say, why? Now we see this Bible which you Europeans brought, which these Africans are using. So in regard to Elliot Kamwana, through his Watchtower movement, stand out. Historically, they say Elliot Kamwana stand out as the man who came with one of the strongest voices of that African protest. So the Africans are protesting, the Africans are developing nationalistic mentality, the Africans. So Elliot Kamwana is said to have been the first to lead the way, to be the pioneer of that. So to the supporters of the movement and many Africans, the Watchtower was part of their effort to free themselves from the authority of European churches and was in part a political and African right movement. So to the Africans, the Watchtower, they took the Watchtower as a political movement which is there fighting for their emancipation and fighting for their rights. So it is said that the collision of the influence of the Watchtower from Nyasaland and the influence of the Industrial and Commercial Workers' Union in South Africa, which was formed by Clemens Kadali, the collusion, the coming together, the other one from the south, the other one from the central, across Central Southern Africa, boiled up the political consciousness in the rich sub-region. Hearing of the messages promising freedom from the captivity of Babylon, which came from Elliot Kamwana, that I brought you a message that will bring you out of the Babylon. And the message by the Commercial Workers' Union in South Africa, formed by Clemens Kadali, which emphasized biblically that you should be brought out of bondage in Egypt. So the Egypt, we know in Egypt the people were exposed to hard work, and in Babylon we know. So the Babylonian issue and the Egyptian issue were being dramatized by these two institutions to create in mind in an African of liberate yourself, fight for your rights. During the World War I, the movement went underground because it was banned in Nyasaland and Northern Rhodesia for advocating passive resistance to the recruitment of Africans in the British Army. And its specific seditious sensational pamphlets were also proscribed. The British government apportioned much of the blame for the difficulties they were facing in recruiting natives for the armed forces on Kamwana and his Watchtower movement. So the blame of much of the resistance, or much of refusal for many Africans resistant to be recruited, it is believed it came from Kamwana and his movement. Four Watchtower preachers in Rhodesia arose much widespread overt resistance across Central Africa by openly preaching against the war and condemning it as unchristian, and the action led to the arrest and imprisonment. So all this now we are seeing the Watchtower as a political movement. People are becoming openly politically incentivized. So we are continuing the Watchtower as a political movement. The movement became part of the emerging forms of association that started questioning their working conditions. In the mines, as we have said, at Wank, at what, these Watchtower leaders, because of their influence, because of their own positions, they became the mushrooming associations, which led workers, which mobilized workers in protesting, in questioning about their working conditions, possibly in conducting strikes. And we see that at Shamba, there was a serious mine strike in southern Rhodesia, which was experienced at Shamba from 12 to 17 September 1927, which threatened the regional mining industry. And all the blame was put on the leadership of the Watchtower movement and its adherents. And during this mine strike, 3,500 workers took part in the strike. And 28 suspected ringleaders who were Watchtower leaders were dismissed and deported to Nyasaland. In Belgium, Congo, we are seeing this movement being proscribed in 1934. While in Northern Rhodesia, it was blamed for the disturbance that took place on the Copper Belt in 1935. So the Watchtower is seen as a political movement. People are bracing it as their political mouthpiece. So, and we are seeing that people of the Watchtower group in Solwezi, Copper Belt towns, and in the Luapula Valley, who called themselves Vamulonda, addressed Kamwana as their prophet and founder, and proclaiming him as the seventh angel in the history of the Christian church. You know, now Kamwana is taken as the founder, the angel. So here the movement anti-colonial activities and open preaching against pass laws and taxes worried the government and settlers. And the leader preacher in the Wanki Courier mine compound, Etonga from Nyasaland, was in November 1923 deported back to Nyasaland. Following this incident, all non-Watchtower followers in the country were dismissed from their jobs and deported from the country. So we are seeing the Southern Rhodesia government taking this action. When disagreements between the European farmers and African workers in Rhodesia tobacco growing areas of Lomangundi and Urungwe surfaced in 1906, the Native Department rounded up and deported to Nyasaland 15 Watchtower leaders, accusing them as agitators of the strikes. Hymns were sung in Chinyanja, where names of Kamwana and Chilembwe were mentioned at all Watchtower branches, particularly in Rhodesia's northern West Mashonaland district. So we see now the evolution of the Watchtower movement. And when the American-based Jehovah's Witness of Watchtower Bible Tract, WTBTS, which from 1931 became to be known as Jehovah's Witness, opened their first offices in Nyasaland. Now these Jehovah's Witnesses are coming to Nyasaland and Zambia, which was in 1934 and 1935. They are coming now into Malawi and Zambia. At that time, it was said Kamwana's Watchtower movement had already taken root in the whole of Central and Southern Africa region, and a few of its followers joined the American-based body. So at that time, the Jehovah's Witnesses are coming in 1934 and 1935 in Malawi and Zambia. We're seeing the Watchtower followers refusing to join them. The followers of the Watchtower, what they believe was the Watchtower was an independent African church movement rooted in the aspirations of African people and championing for a new order with Kamwana as its founder, and to associate themselves with the WTBTS at that juncture would have compromised that independence. They see the Watchtower as an independent African movement or church, which is based, rooted in the African culture, which is there for the African values. So the coming in of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society from the America to Zambia and Malawi in 1935 is facing resistance. So Kamwana in exile, I left where Kamwana in 1916 is sent into exile. So after being banished to an almost deserted remote, in Mauritius, Kamwana was banished to an almost deserted remote island, which is called the Flat Island in Mauritius. where they were supposed to stay indefinitely in December but in December 1916. In September 1919, they were moved to Mahe in Seychelles, where Kamwana and his brother were to spend 21 years of their life in exile. So after being in Mauritius from 1916, in September 1919, they are moved to Mahe in Seychelles, where Kamwana and his brother were to spend 21 years of their life exile. So the British government allocated, the way they were staying in Mauritius, the British government had allocated a policeman to guard them, and they had to report to a nearby police station twice a day. Their movements were closely monitored, and Kamwana was banned from preaching and attending any church service. While in Seychelles, Kamwana was not allowed to have a meeting with more than 10 people at a time. In exile, Kamwana became a very prosperous farmer who grew bananas and pineapples, which he was allowed to sell to the public. Kamwana, it is said that while there, Kamwana had a visitation from the local clergy of the Church of England, who were accompanied by a delegation from the University's mission to Central Africa from Likoma here in Malawi. So it is alleged that that delegation was sanctioned by the British government. Why that delegation? The visitors went there to persuade Kamwana to join the church. And they assured him that once, if accepted, they offered that he would be released and he would be made a bishop after the return to Nyasaland. So he will be released, you'll be made bishop after you return to Nyasaland. However, Kamwana and his friends refused the offer. So on 10 January 1926, we are seeing another Mulaga Mwenda. We have said Kamwana and his brother, together with Mulaga Mwenda and his young wife, were arrested together. And on 10 January 1928, we are seeing Mulaga Mwenda being released home. And he returned home on boarding the SS Kandlala, which is called the steamer, which was called the SS Kandlala. And on 28th January, he started from Mauritius from Seychelles back to Nyasaland. So the Kamwana and his brother and their wives remained in Seychelles. While in Seychelles, Kamwana lost his wife, Annie Nyamanda, born in 1894. She died of chronic asthma on 10 June 1932 at the Victoria Hospital at Mahe. Unlike other exiles and deportees to Mauritius and Seychelles, her body was not repatriated to Nyasaland for fear that Kamwana's presence in Nyasaland would have caused political upheaval. So they refused the body to come to Nyasaland and they buried her in Seychelles. Arrangements with his wife dead, Kamwana arrangements were made in Malawi to have him a wife, and a wife in the name of Lonia Kasambara was the sister to prominent chieftainship in Tongaland, Chief Mangambira, was identified, and Kamwana raised 515 rupees, out of which 415 was handed to the family as Chiwongo, Bradworth, and the remainder was used as transport for Lonia to travel to join Kamwana in Seychelles, where she arrived on 15 May 1935. Kamwana and his brother Chandika were released when a general amnesty declared by King George V during his coronation in May 1937. So when King George was being coronated, part of his celebrations was to release people like Kamwana. So Kamwana in May, we see Kamwana in May 1937 being pardoned by King George the Sixth. So we are talking about from 1916 to 1937, Kamwana and his brother were in exile, exiled in Mauritius and Seychelles. So they left the islands on 13 July for Beira on the SS Kenya. and they traveled by train from Beira, and in announced move finally arrived at Chintech on 16 October. So despite the British monarch pardoning him, in Nyasaland the government was still concerned to contain Kamwana. The acting governor restricted his movement within his Chintech district. So Kamwana is back in 1937, but still more the government is not comfortable with him. So what they should do is they restrict him to Chintech district, his home district. So while Kamwana, when he came back, he was welcomed both by the Jehovah's Witnesses and his watchtower. That time, the watchtower was in the midst of leadership chaos. So the two bodies, the Jehovah's Witnesses, which came in 1935, and this church, the watchtower, both welcomed him. But he temporarily joined the Jehovah's Witness, where he assumed that position, but refused a full-time post. So Kamwana said, no, I'll be part of you, I'll pray with you, but I will not be a permanent member of you. So after that, within 2 months of his arrival back, Kamwana formed a new church, the Watchman Healing Mission, Mlonda Healing Mission, Vamulonda Church, on 6 December 1931, and based it at a place surrounded by 3 streams, river streams, Chilembwe, Lwazi, and Ndakowaka, which is at Msuli in Longwe village, and he called the place Chivangalumwe. I think in Chivangalumwe in Tonga is where the sun shines, where the sun rises, where the sun is bright. So the name meant a holy place or Zion of God, and became a symbol of his withdrawal from secular society in order to establish a new identity for himself and his church. Now, Kamwana is creating for himself and his church new identity. And he calls his church, he establishes new church, and he calls his place holy place, Zion of God, Chivangalumwe. Kamwana adopted the localized Galvanism flag. His church, Kamwana, took after the Michael Garvey's flag, some terms which is called Pan-African flag, which is a black, red, and green, horizontally stripped flag that symbolizes unity of African people and their fight for freedom for his newfound church, which was hosted at this flag was hosted at this church. So he is adopting this spirit of unity, and still more in he feels there should be the fight for freedom. So while he is adopting the new identity, still more the spirit of fighting, the spirit of resilience prevails in him. So he embodies this flag, the black, red, and the green. And the services at this church was started with church members marching in procession and hosting the flag. So when services were starting, the flag was in the front, they marched, they are hosting it, they are hosting it. Sorry, they are hosting it. So that is, I think that is the first instance where I see this red, black, green flag is used in Malawi, is applied in Malawi, a flag which later Malawi adopted as its national flag. So he says, once the procession is in place, Kamwana dressed in a special regalia and wearing his crown-saving hat and carrying his stick in his left hand and a fly whisk in his right hand, led the procession while they sang in unison. So there's a song which they sang, which unfortunately I have not been able to find it in my audio archives, but there's a song which they sang. So Kamwana was seeing him here holding, carrying a stick in his left hand and a fly whisk in his right hand, wearing a crown-saving hat. The way Garvey used to wear, now Kamwana is portraying that, and he's leading the procession with the flag in front. Before Kamwana formed the Watchtower Healing Mission 1936, and with the encroachment and influence of now established Jehovah's Witnesses in the region, the Watchtower movement had remained with 123 members in northern Nyasaland, 711 in southern Nyasaland, 687 in northern Rhodesia, 353 in southern Rhodesia, 755 in South Africa, and 698 in Tanzania. So with time, because of those leadership wrangles, with time and the government restrictions, with time the Watchtower movement was facing difficulties, the leadership crisis. So you can see just before the Kamwana formed the Watchtower Healing Mission, those were the adherents which were left with the Watchtower across those countries. Kamwana died on 31 July 1956 at Chiwangalumwe, and his remains were buried in his house to prevent his body from being smuggled away by a government agency. Government had planned to thwart his burial at the church in order to stop it becoming a shrine and a rallying point for anti-government activities. So Kamwana dies, government says, no way, you cannot bury Kamwana here. Government wanted to snatch the body, but his supporters were vigilant. They buried him in his house because government was fearing that his burial place would turn into a shrine and a rallying point for anti-government activities. So Kamwana passes on. He's buried at Chiwangalumwe in his house. Validation. We have said Kamwana is the pace setter of nationalism, the spirit of nationalism in Malawi. We know the epitome of nationalism in Malawi capitulated into Chilembwe's rising, but it was a process. It was a creation which went that far, and Kamwana is described as the pace setter of that spirit. And it is said, these are the facts, the points others have raised, that Kamwana's era was said to have marked the beginning of a newer type of African reaction to Europeans in Nyasaland that brought them head to head with the first wave of Ethiopianism phenomena in the country. So the commission Alfred Sharp, to commission Alfred Sharp, Kamwana was a shifty and desirable, dangerous man. While Hamish was of the view that Kamwana's movement, teachings and relationship with the mission and colonial government set the pace for independent and nationalistic consciousness in Malawi. The millennium teaching and the preaching of the Watchtower movement ignited the early signs of concerns registered by Europeans and colonial administration against Nyasa migrants across Central and Southern African region. The Kamwana era, it is said, it marked the blueprint of the modern African political resistance against European missionary and colonial forces. In 1920s and 1930s, using the terms Ethiopianism and Watchtower interchangeably was fashionable by anti-colonial agents and those who supported African nationalism, a situation that identified and vindicated the prevailing sense that saw the Watchtower movement as a political rebellion. And the Cockerel, whom I said wanted to visit Kamwana Chinde but was restricted, had this to say: the natives of the Watchtower movement mission about Bandawe are very strong and are inclined to make trouble with our people there, and the government is afraid there will be uprising. So it's Cockerel who is writing his people in America that the natives of the Watchtower movement about Bandawe, they're strong, and the government is afraid that anytime there can be an uprising amongst them. Kamwana himself emerged as a symbol of civil disobedience and political defiance, and historians like Oliver Ransford have it that regard acknowledge that Kamwana was the forerunner of nationalism and the harbinger of Kwacha, the dawn. And in 1958, our great son, some of our great politicians, Dunduzu Chisiza, wrote Shepperson a letter in which he said, we used to wonder, how on earth it was that if few history books that have been written on Nyasaland, either by missionaries or non-missionaries, make no mention of the role of Africans, bad or good. Even Professor Hanna in his beginning of Nyasaland never says bo about the people like Charles Domingo or Elliot Kamwana, let alone John Chilembwe. And yet these men are our Gandhis, Karaos, Krumahs, Azikiwes, Nassas, etc. They are our national heroes and martyrs. Not that we approve of everything they did, but their names have the same connotation to us as the names of Drake, Raila, Pitt, Wilberforce, and others have to you. This is Dunduzi Caesar to George Shepperson, writing on 28 October 1956. So my presentation was to say, we have this man, but going through a lot of our history narratives, a lot of our political speeches, a lot of, you rarely hear about the mention of Elliot Kamwana. And the question always has been why? And I don't have answers, but my possibly assumptions, which might be true or wrong, is that possibly the politics of our country have made it possible to mostly bury the narratives on Kamwana. Why so? I see Kamwana as being treated unjustly. We ought to have narratives of Kamwana publicized, spread along the way we have done with Chilembwe. We know the epitome of our rising had hallmarks. So the hallmarks might be Chilembwe's uprising, 3rd March, the 1902 Chindeche demonstrations, all those. But if we leave Kamwana out of the scenario, then I feel we're doing injustice to our history. We are doing justice to our people. I close my presentation. Thank you. I hope you are hearing me.
Yes. We heard you loud and clear. Historian Zombe, many thanks for your presentation. Very insightful and straight to the point and uplifting the role that was played by Elliot Kamwana Chirwa to the struggle for independence, not only in Malawi, but in the entire Southern African region. Excellent presentation, Edward Zombe. Many thanks for that. And without much ado, I would like to open the floor for inputs, questions, both to the first presenter, Kamwana Selenje, as well as to the second presenter, Edward Zombe, who has just finished. We have already gone beyond time, but in the next 30 minutes, I beg your indulgence, participants, that we go further within the next 30 minutes just to wind up and get the inputs and the discussion flowing, and then we close at that. I see a hand from Queen Mother Moses from Jamaica. Queen Mother
Yes,
Moses.
I am in Jamaica. Blessed love. Excellent,
Blessed love.
excellent presentations.
Get the
Okay.
floor, Queen Mother Moses. Yeah.
Give thanks, give thanks.
As much as
Excellent,
possible.
excellent.
As much as possible, be
Very,
brief.
3 questions, straight to it. My
go
first
ahead.
question is about the Thangata system. Just tell us a little what, of that system that was in place, the Thangata system. Also, number 2, the PIM, Church of Kamwana. What does that acronym mean, the PIM? And I did not get the year of his death. I got 31st of July, but I didn't get the year. Those are my 3 questions. Give thanks. Excellent. Thank you. You filled in a lot of gaps for me.
All right. Many thanks, Queen Mother Moses, for the 3 questions. I think I'll call upon Edward Zombe to respond to the year Kamwana died, and the Selenje, you also talk about the PIM, the acronym, what does it mean? And then the first question, I think, also went to Edward Zombe on the, remind me, Queen Mother Moses, the first question?
Thangata.
Thangata system. Yes, I think the one who mentioned Thangata system was Conley Kamwana Selenje. So 2 questions.
The first presenter.
Kamwana
Yes.
Selenje. But we start with Edward Zombe to talk about the year Elliot Kamwana died. Over to you, Edward Zombe, briefly, and then we move to Kamwana Selenje. Many thanks.
Yeah, I've said Elliot Kamwana died on 31st July, 1956.
1956. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the year of my birth.
And,
Okay.
and the other question on PIM is that was Chilembwe's church, which is the Providence Industrial Mission.
Providence Industrial Mission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was Chilembwe's.
Yes.
Yeah, that was Chilembwe's church.
Thank you. Providence
Maybe-
Industrial Mission, Church of Chilembwe.
yeah.
I got it.
Historian Eddie, since you already have the floor, you can take us through the Thangata system for Queen Mother Moses. Over to you, Eddie.
Yeah, the Thangata system was a system, there was a time when Africans were flocking to European estates, to work on European estates. And mostly were people across from Mozambique, which is not Nyasaland. They were coming into Nyasaland where Europeans had established estates along the boundary in Mulanje and Cholo district. So those people, when they came into the country, they had no home, but they wanted to work for the estates. So in the process of working for the estates, is when the European estate owners devised a system whereby say, all right, since you are staying on our estates, while we are paying you for doing the job you are doing, now we are going to add a task for you which you do free in order to cater for the rentals for staying on our estates. So these guys, while they did their normal work on the estates, they had some days where they did some hours and days where they worked for free to pay for the rentals where they were staying. So that was called Tangata. Tangata means to help. So it's like they were helping the estate owners by working for nothing because they were staying on the estate land. So it was like paying for the rentals. So it was called Tangata. You are helping free labor. So that was the Tangata and was prevalent in the Shira Highlands, which is the land bordering Mozambique, where a lot of these workers were mostly Lomwes came from. I think you have heard me clear there.
Queen Mother
Give
Moses, are you
thanks.
okay?
Yes, yes, I am clear.
Oh.
Give thanks.
All right, many thanks. Any other hand or any other comment, question? As I look for the hands, there was a question on the chat, historian Zombe. Someone wanted to know whether John Chilembwe ever met face to face with Elliot Kamwana Chirwa, or there was just a correspondence through letters and that was it. Did they ever meet face to face and had a word face to face? As I look for the hands up, can you attend to that question, historian Zombe?
Yeah, with all the literature, history literature I've read, I have not seen somewhere where Chilembwe physically meets Kamwana, though it said there was communication between Chilembwe and Kamwana, but physically I have not come across any literature which says so.
Many thanks. I see no further hands. Just a last chance for those that wanted to say something or contribute something. This is it before we move towards closing the session. Right. Conleth, it has been a while. You haven't said anything. I give you
Can I ask
5
the
minutes.
question?
Oh, okay. There's a question. All right. Go ahead. Put up your question and introduce yourself, where you're calling from, and then you get to ask your question. Over to you, because I can't see
Okay,
who
thank
is
you.
talking. Yeah.
Thank you so much. My name is Wangani. I'm based here in Malawi. I'm based in Mzuzu. And thank you, Mr. Zombe and Mr. Serenje, for the wonderful presentation. My question I wanted to ask, since you have talked about Elliot Kamwana, what were the procedures of making for Malawi to be remembering John Chilembwe? Who influenced it? Who were the ones who promoted for John Chilembwe to be remembered? Was it the British, or was it the Black Americans or the Black community through the Baptist church, or the church where John Chilembwe, the Providence, where PIM came from? Or was it influenced by the MCP when the government started? Who were the ones who influenced for us to be remembering John Chilembwe? Yes, thank you.
All right, many thanks. Before Eddie Zombe takes that one, I want to check whether there's any other question on the floor so that our presenters can respond to all the questions at once, and then we go into closing. Is this the only question that was remaining from the participants? Okay, all right. I don't see any other hand. So I invite historian Zombe to respond to the question and also give your final remarks in 5 minutes. And then from there, we move to Conleth to also say his final, parting shots, and then we close the session. So over to you, historian Eddie Zombe.
Yeah, that is a good question. Popularizing somebody in historical terms has a lot of facets around it. You see that the first to write about John Chilembwe was Mwase. He's the one who first compiled something on Chilembwe when he was in detention with the Chilembwe's followers. Then others followed it up. So, but what I can say that after independence, it became difficult for free mind historians to write on anything in Malawi, which was considered sensitive. Because you should remember, even Kamuzu adored Chilembwe. But when you look at his behavior towards the Chilembwe itself, you tend to wonder why was this really true? So Chilembwe has been popularized, as a lot has been written about Chilembwe. So the same way a lot have been Chilembwe, we have, if there was little or nothing on Elliot Kamwana, I think we should open the chapter. People should research. People should do the way they did with the Chilembwe. People can also research on Kamwana and popularize him. But the fact that we want to bring the history which we feel it was lost. So I cannot say one person popularized Chilembwe, no. People have written on Chilembwe, Didi wrote on Chilembwe, this independent African by these two white guys wrote on Chilembwe, Mwase wrote on Chilembwe. People have been writing on Chilembwe. So the ball is in our hands as historians. The more we research, we write, the more we unbury the history of these other people who were to be forgotten. So I think that's what I can say. Politics, yes, plays an important role, but now we are out of that. Camus is no longer with us. People are free to write. Yeah. I think my last what I want to add lastly that I thank this Lost History Foundation for giving me this privilege to present on Elliot Kamwana. I think to most of us, even to me, it has been an eye-opener, the way the journey through which I researched, discovered something on Elliot Kamwana. It is an eye-opener. And the Lost History Foundation for giving this privilege to present this today to a wider audience. I think it's a privilege. I know many who are listening to this, it's a new story to them, but it's a historical fact, and we should put in a historical context for Malawians to understand it, and I don't take that for granted. Thanks a lot for giving this opportunity, for giving me this opportunity. I think I thank the audience for listening. Of course, I came late at the problems coming in, but I thank you for your patience, for listening. God bless you. Thanks.
All right, many thanks, Eddie Zombe. I see a hand here before I move to Conlith Kamkwala Serenje to do final remarks. Chisomo Guzani, what do you want to say before we close in a minute? Over to you, Chisomo Guzani.
All right, thank you. Okay, I posted my question in the comments, so I think you missed it. But since I'm here, I can as well just ask. Yeah, so my question goes to the whole Lost History Foundation organization. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask, these lost pieces of history, they're really important. I don't know brought into the national school curriculum, or is there a platform where you are putting?
Kuzani. Okay, I think we have lost him. I will look for his question on the chat. He said he had posted it there. All right, so Kamkwala Serenje, as we look for the question from Guzani, can you give us your parting shots in 5 minutes? Over to you, Conlith Kamkwala Serenje.
I would like to thank my co-presenter, Elder Edward Zombe. I can term him as a scholar of Elliot Kamwana, because indeed he has made a research which is not found in any other books, but apart only in what he wrote. It's a deep research, actually, which is very rich. And I think the audience has drawn similarities between John Chilembwe and Elliot Kamwana. There is a big connection, as you have seen. I also would like to thank Mr. Piri from South Africa, who is our technical engineer, and colleagues from the Lost History Foundation, and you participants. I think this day, 15th January 2026, has been well commemorated, and whatever we have discussed here will go to the next level, whereby the content will be considered and published into proper form for our nation and beyond. I thank everyone for the good time. Thank you so much.
All right. Many thanks, Conlith, and for the, and Eddie Zombie as well for your presentations, both of you, at short notice, especially Eddie Zombie, to work on the presentation and be with us this evening. That was commendable indeed, and we appreciate your presence. As we come to the close of this session, ladies and gentlemen and colleagues, it is evident that today's discussion has taken us beyond the commemoration as a ritual act and into the remembrance as a critical and inclusive process. The reflection on John Chilembwe and Elliot Kamwana Chirwa has reminded us that Malawi's struggle for freedom was neither singular nor linear. It was shaped by multiple actors operating in different moments, spaces, and ideological traditions. So to acknowledge this complexity is not to weaken the legacy of John Chilembwe, but to situate it within a broader historical continuum of resistance, sacrifice, and moral courage. What has emerged clearly is the cost of historical selectivity, as historian Zombe kept on mentioning towards the end of his presentation. When national memory privileges a single narrative, it risks silencing other voices whose contributions were equally formative but less institutionally recognized. Recovering underrepresented narratives is therefore not merely an academic exercise. It is an ethical obligation to those who labored, suffered, and in some cases lost their lives in pursuit of dignity and freedom. So let this session serve not as a conclusion, but as a starting point for a broader re-engagement with Malawi's past, an engagement that accommodates plurality, embraces complexity, and honors all those who shaped the struggle for freedom, whether remembered or forgotten. So, on that note, colleagues, I thank our speakers once again, historian Zombe and Colonel Kamwana Selenje from the Lost History Foundation, and all the participants for their thoughtful engagement. And I encourage us to carry this expanded discourse forward beyond this space. On that note, we come to the end of our session tonight, going by the Malawi time, which is going towards 9:30 p.m. Enjoy the rest of your day, those of you who are still having a day to spend, and enjoy your night. And for those of you who are preparing to get to bed for the evening, especially those who are on the same side of the world, like me, where we are in the late evening. Many thanks, and bye-bye.
Merci beaucoup. Good night.